Health and fitness requires more than just the physical work. It starts with the work you put in to grow your mind. Welcome to the Mind Gains podcast, where we discuss what it takes mentally to see results physically. I'm your host, Jess. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. I hope you are having a great day today. I know I am in a really great mood today. It is a Friday for me. I know I always come out with episodes on Mondays, but I'm usually recording on a Friday, which is my favorite day of the week. So I'm having a great day so far, and I hope you are too. I also have plans tonight to kind of meet friends, so just a lot going on today that I am really excited about, but I am happy to be sitting down and recording an episode. I will say, if you're watching on YouTube, we have been having storms like pretty much all day today. So if the lighting is a little bit off, I do apologize. It's been pretty gloomy all day, but regardless, we're still sitting here recording for another episode. And today's topic is going to be so vitally important. And I feel like I've been having this conversation pretty frequently lately, so I do want to touch base on this and kind of give you some more information about the value of rest, why taking rest days is so important, why it's really honestly a non-negotiable. Like, we cannot not take rest days and still expect to see phenomenal results. Rest is just as important as your actual workouts. It's just as important as everything else that we're doing within health and fitness. The thing is when it comes to workouts, nutrition, your exercise outside of the gym, your recovery, your rest, your sleep, all of these things matter a ton. And a lot of times we tend to kind of hyperfixate on workouts and nutrition as the two biggest things. And they are very, very important components as well. But we also really have to make sure that we're giving to our rest appropriately. Everything that we're doing here, they all work together to give us the best results possible. So we don't want to neglect any piece of this. So today I do want to talk about the value of rest and why it's so important. And I know for myself personally, I used to not understand this at all. I thought that going to the gym, honestly, like 6 days a week was ideal or something to really strive for. And I'm not demonizing going to the gym 6 days a week. If any of you are doing that, or if you know someone that's doing that, don't go to them and be like, well, I learned that you shouldn't do that. And it's actually really bad for you and it's bad for your recovery. Because I'm not saying that. Obviously doing something is always better than nothing. And honestly, it just comes down to most of the time we don't know. But I used to think that to have really awesome results, you wanted to be in the gym 6 days a week. I feel like I always knew 7 days was too much. I always knew you did need at least one rest day. But now understanding how vitally important rest is, I am a firm believer in having bare minimum 2 rest days a week, if not even 3 to 4, just depending on your schedule, how much you can commit to working out and all of that. So if you are currently going to the gym 6 to 7 days a week, this episode is for you. And I think a lot of times it's really just coming down to the fact that we view rest as being lazy. And we don't think that we're making progress when we are taking rest, but that's not true at all. I feel like that's actually when we're making the most progress a lot of time, is when we are taking our rest days, we are giving to our sleep and our recovery, and just making sure we are taking care of ourselves mentally and physically as well. And there are a lot of different components when it comes to this. It's going to come down to it affects your growth of your muscles, your recovery of your muscles. It affects hormone regulation, nervous system balance, and it can obviously prevent injury as well, which is what we all want. No one wants to get injured ever. So super important to make sure we understand the importance behind rest. And I also think in the world that we live in, there's really like two major groups of people. I think that there are a lot of people that don't want to do anything when it comes to taking care of yourself, working out, obviously, all of that. That is a very real thing that a lot of people just kind of stay in that nothing area as far as the all or nothing balance kind of goes. But then there's also this very real grind culture that we're dealing with. And I used to kind of semi be in this pool of people. I feel like I spent time in both areas, but I want to be very careful about, I guess, the way I word this, because I'm not totally against grind culture. Like, I do think it is super important to make sure we're working very hard. We should be holding ourselves to a higher standard and really pushing ourselves and really challenging ourselves, and not just, giving into what we want to do in the moment. Like we do need to hold ourselves to that standard, but we can also take it too far sometimes where we don't give ourselves grace and we push too much and then we become burnt out. Then we end up with injuries and then we're falling into the nothing side of the spectrum and just kind of staying stuck there because we pushed ourselves a little bit too much. So there is a very fine line there. And I guess what I would encourage you to do is more so if you are finding yourself pushing all the time and really trying to challenge yourself, maintain that, but switch to like grind culture for more of like a smart training culture, if that makes sense. We want to have really effective workouts and we do want to push ourselves to reach our goals, but we do also need to be smart about the way that we're doing it and I guess like have the knowledge of why we're doing what we're doing and why both sides of the equation are just as important, working hard, resting hard. We need to understand these things. So, we're going to really break down again what happens during rest, and I'll also give you my opinion on how many rest days you should be taking per week and kind of what you should be doing during those rest days. And I want to start with the muscle growth, muscle recovery aspect, because I feel like that is the thing that we most often think about. Again, when we get into working out, we get into all of this, we start our health and fitness journey. It is 9 times out of 10 because we have a physical goal we want to reach. So we usually want to lose a little bit of body fat and increase our muscle mass. Usually the main goal, the very generic goal is I want to look toned or I want to look defined, which comes down to just having enough muscle mass on your body and having a low enough body fat percentage. So getting into the muscle recovery part of this, people tend to think that they are growing and increasing their muscle mass when they are working out. And that is just not true. What is happening during a lift? And I guess let me specify I'm talking about strength training because we also have this big argument, conflict going around of like different forms of exercise. And I will never demonize any form of exercise, but if you want to be building muscle mass, if you want to look defined and toned, that comes from having muscle mass on you, probably a lot more than you currently have. It's going to come from strength training. It's not going to really come from running. It's not going to really come from Pilates. It's not going to really come from hot yoga. Those are all great forms of exercise, but you do also have to line up whatever your goal is with your approach. So if you need to build muscle mass or you want to build muscle mass, that comes from lifting heavy things. That comes from strength training. So when we are in the gym, strength training, we are pushing ourselves and we're going until failure and we're really challenging ourselves. The only thing happening during that time is destruction. You are not growing during that time. You are not increasing your muscle mass while you're in the gym. So when you are continuously picking up heavier weights week by week, you're really implementing progressive overload efficiently. You are creating micro tears in your muscle fibers. And some people get a little bit worried about that. They hear that and think that that's a bad thing and they get a little worried like, oh, should I not be pushing as hard? Yes, you need to be pushing as hard. That is a good thing. It is a good thing to have those micro tears. If that's not happening, your workout is, I don't want to say completely useless because I still think, again, there is value in just moving your body, but you're not going to be increasing your muscle mass. You're not going to be growing muscle and you're not going to really be getting stronger because you're not challenging your muscle enough in order to do that. So when you're lifting heavier weights, you are, on your dumbbell shoulder press, you lifted 20 pounds last week, let's just say, for 8 reps. Now, this week you got up to 25 pounds for 8 reps. You are creating those micro tears. Now, in order to have your muscle mass grow back bigger and stronger, that comes from following that workout up with adequate nutrition and adequate rest and recovery. That's also why it's important that we're not working out the same muscle group back to back, if that makes sense. Like, we don't want to do 2 leg days back to back consecutively. We don't want to do a leg day on Monday and then another leg day on Tuesday. Because what's happening, if you are doing that, most likely, is that you're just not giving your body enough time to heal from that first initial leg day. It's almost just like you are picking a scab and not letting it heal. So if you're working out your quads on Monday and then you try to work them out again on Tuesday, or even, your glutes and your hamstrings, even though they're different muscle groups, you're still going to be getting those your quads involved on a on your glute and hamstring day. They're all close together. They're all going to be involved regardless of whatever like dominant day you have going on. You are picking at a scab and not allowing it to fully heal. So, if you are doing 2 leg days a week, you want to just do your best to try to space them out as evenly as possible. I know for myself, I do my leg days on Tuesdays and Fridays just because that gives me the most amount of time in between my 2 leg days. Same thing with core work. I personally do 2 core sessions a week and I try to space them out as much as I can. Obviously, there's some situations, there's some people that I work with even that it's like I can literally only work out Monday through Wednesday and that is all I have time for. That is the only schedule that I have like the capacity for. In that case, okay, but what I recommend is if you do, for example, a core on, if you're normally doing it on Mondays and Wednesdays in that scenario, if you do your core work on Monday and by Wednesday you are feeling so extremely sore, I would rather you just skip it, wait for next Monday, because we are just continuing to pick at that scab and not allowing it to heal, which is when we are repairing our muscles. So, the way I want you to think about this, again, when you're in the gym, everything that you are doing is catabolic. You are tearing down your muscles, you are destroying them. It is like demolition day, and it's awesome. But we have to follow that up with rest, with adequate sleep, quality and quantity, with rest days, and with adequate nutrition, protein, calorie intake, and all of that. There are two parts of the equation. If you have a goal to put on muscle mass, but you're only doing one part, if you're only ever resting, you're not going to build muscle mass. But if you're also only ever in the gym, not allowing your body to rest, you're also not going to build muscle mass. It's like trying to do a math equation, but you are missing one part of the equation. Like you're never going to solve it. You're never going to get to that end result that you want. So, really, just understanding the importance of rest when it comes to muscle growth, because I've also worked with a lot of people that when they've come to me, they are working out every single day of the week or 6 days a week, and they view rest days as pointless and they really don't care about it. That is usually the biggest reason that they're stuck. And I always have to kind of like work them down to a lower workout split, like 4 or 5 days a week. It can be a little uncomfortable at first because, again, if you do have that mindset that you are, wasting a day if you're not in the gym, that can be really hard to overcome. But understanding the science behind how this all works, I think has been really helpful for them. Something else that's happening when you are taking your rest days is the replenishment of your glycogen stores, which is what allows us to have the energy needed for our lifts. Glycogen is the body's stored form of carbohydrates, which again, we all know is what gives us our energy. So on your rest days, your body is working to repair those stores so that when you do go into the gym for your next lift, you are able to have a very effective and very efficient, intense lift like you want. If you do not ever take rest days and you don't allow your body to replenish your depleted glycogen stores, it is very, very possible and very likely that you are going to feel pretty sluggish and fatigued and not really able to have that great of lifts or workout intensity. Your rest days also really play a big factor in your central nervous system, which is your spinal cord and your brain. The CNS is heavily involved in coordination, reaction time, and strength output. Really intense training, especially strength training or high intensity interval training, really taxes your central nervous system. And if you're not allowing it any rest ever, your nervous system is going to be fatigued, which can have a lot of really negative side effects. Slower reflexes, decreases in strength, brain fog, trouble sleeping, mood swings, irritability. Like, it is honestly a recipe for disaster. We need to make sure we're taking care of our nervous system as well. So those rest days also allow your CNS the ability and the time to recover and recharge. Intense or frequent training can also spike cortisol levels, and nobody wants the results of chronically elevated cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone. This leads to inflammation, poor sleep quality, fat retention, and anxiety. So your rest days allow cortisol levels to drop and other recovery supporting hormones like growth hormone to balance out. which is also crucial for muscle repair. Strength training is a form of controlled stress, though. So when you are in the gym lifting weights, you are very purposefully and very strategically putting your body, your muscles, and your central nervous system under stress. And that part is not a bad thing. But again, overdoing it and never allowing yourself to kind of recover from that is the bad part. Like that is going to cause some negative side effects. And with that, one of those negative side effects is decreasing your body's immune response, which obviously keeps us from getting sick all the time, which nobody wants either. And I think a lot of times we also tend to ignore the signs that we need a rest day, or maybe even don't know what those signs are. So I want to kind of go over those really quickly so you know what to be on the look for. Signs that you might need a rest day is if you are totally sore all of the time. Obviously, being sore for a day or two after your lift can be normal, but if you are 5, 6, 7 days after your lift and that muscle group is still insanely sore, we probably pushed a little bit too hard. We might need a little bit of extra rest to come back from that. Decreased performance in the gym, you're going in and you're just not as strong. Again, that is something that there could be other factors playing into that as well. But if you continuously see that your performance has just been decreasing over time and you're in the gym 6 or 7 days a week, that is probably why. Mood swings, irritability, trouble sleeping, these can all be signs that you might be overdoing it with your training. So, when it comes to your rest days, what I would personally recommend is, again, anywhere from 2 to 4 rest days a week. Ideally, 2 to 3, just because obviously it's going to depend on how many days you're in the gym. What I usually recommend for that is anywhere from 3 to 5 days. So, then obviously your rest days would be the other days. But ideally, you'd want to be closer to a 4 day workout split, maybe 5 day, just depending on what your goal is, how much time you have, what your schedule looks like. So I myself personally work out 5 days a week. I take 2 rest days. I might at some point go down to a 4 day workout split, take 3 rest days, but you definitely want to be taking at least those 2 days. The only time I would say maybe working out 6 days might be okay is if you are very, very heavily giving to your rest and your recovery and you're more advanced, you know what you're doing. Maybe you're working with a coach and they really know what they're doing. I mean, obviously, if you're working with someone, you would hope that, but you never know. So that is really the only situation that I could see maybe working out 6 days a week might be okay, but also really monitoring that to see how your performance is. Are you achieving the results that you want? Are you making progress? Are you feeling overly sore or kind of having these side effects of maybe some overtraining? For the general population, I recommend at least 2 rest days per week. But there is also a difference between an active recovery day and a full rest day. A full rest day is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. You are not going in the gym, you are not doing really any sort of physical exercise. You are just having a complete total rest day. Whereas an active recovery day, maybe you are going out on a little bit longer of a walk, or maybe you're doing something that is like very, very low intensity exercise. If that's going on, maybe like a leisurely bike ride, or doing some swimming, or something that is still moving your body, but in a very mild, low intense kind of way. So some people, if they do like a 4 day workout split, they might have like 2 active recovery days, 1 rest day, or vice versa. So it is really just about kind of finding what works best for you. But for myself personally, I go to the gym 5 days a week. My lifts are pretty dang intense. I take 2 full rest days and make sure that I am very, very intentional with those rest days in what I'm doing. And so when it comes to what you want to be focusing on your full rest days, you still want to get your steps in. You still, if you have a step goal, want to make sure that you're meeting that. But you also want to be a little bit more intentional about spending some time, maybe like foam rolling or stretching, some light movement that is going to help aid in your recovery. Again, stretching we really should be doing every day, at least once every other day, but maybe spending a little bit more time, an extra 15, 20 minutes on your rest days to make sure that you are allowing your body to recover very well. And when it comes to stretching, you want to be doing more of like static stretching, which is just holding the stretches. You're not really moving too much, as opposed to dynamic stretching is what you want to be doing prior to your lifts, where you are bringing your muscles really through like the full range of movement. If you think about before a leg day, you're doing leg swings. That is a dynamic movement because you want to really warm your muscles up and make sure that they're ready for that lift. Whereas on a rest day, you'd be doing more static stretching, just kind of holding the muscles and allowing them to fully stretch. And on the mental side, having rest days really helps your mental health as well. If you feel like you always need to be doing more and you always need to be doing the most and in the gym for 2 hours every single day, it is very likely that you are going to, at some point, deal with burnout. So that rest does really also help support long-term consistency. You don't ever want to get to a point where exercise or movement in general is a punishment. It is not a punishment. It is actually a gift that we have the ability to move our body. If you have the privilege to go to a gym and to exercise, that is a gift because not everyone has that. And so we don't ever want to get to a point where we're viewing exercise or using it as a way to like get back at ourselves for, maybe not eating the best the night before or taking an extra rest day last week. We don't ever want to use it as a punishment. We want to find that balance between, again, working hard and resting hard, giving ourselves grace when needed. If we do need to take one extra rest day once every 4 months, and not allowing ourselves to kind of get burnt out from exercise. Now, that does not mean that we're always going to feel like doing it and feel like, oh, I'm so excited to get to the gym today. But there is a difference between just not feeling motivated to do it and not really wanting to be in the gym versus physically, mentally being completely burnt out. You're extremely sore, you're extremely mind numb, you just feel like you're having brain fog, you don't have mental clarity. Like there's a very clear difference between those two things. And I also want to tie in getting into what the Lord says about taking rest days, because this is also something that's been very convicting for me, not so much in the sense of being in the gym, but honestly, when it comes to work, when it comes to doing extra things on the side, just always feeling like I need to be productive in order to be fulfilled. But I know that it's so real. If you are listening to this and you are a Christian, it is so real that if you're in that position that you feel like you need to be in the gym constantly, you always need to be doing more, that we also need to look deep at what God says about it, because he gives us all the answers. That's the cool thing about having the Bible, is it is literally a guide on everything in life. And so when we feel a little confused on something, or when we feel like we don't know how to handle a situation, or we don't know if maybe rest days are pointless or not, he has the answers in there. So I kind of want to tie in that as well. And just going off right off the bat, we get it in Genesis, showing that God himself rested after creating all of creation. After designing literally everything that we see with our eyes, he took 6 days to do that, and then he rested on the seventh day, giving us the prime example of what we need to be doing. Obviously, when you translate that into the gym, that does not mean being in the gym 6 days a week, but it does mean, again, finding that balance between working hard and then allowing yourself that time to rest. And I wrote down that I wanted to turn to Exodus 23:12. So it says, 6 days do your work, but on the seventh day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. Again, just giving us the prime example of working when it's time to work. There is a very clear command that we do need to be working hard and we do need to be taking care of ourselves. And, that obviously applies to everything in your life. It applies to your job. It applies to anything that you have maybe going on the side, anything that you've committed your time to. Maybe it's ministry, maybe it's podcasting. I don't know what you have going on, but then we do need to allow ourselves to kind of take some time as well and not feel like we always need to be working in order to be successful or in order to achieve the results that we're after when it comes to health and fitness, because he has created this balance so perfectly. Again, it is an equation. And so if we do one part of the equation, but we completely neglect the other part, we are never going to get to where we want to be. So we have to have both parts. You have to be pushing in the gym. You have to be challenging yourself, and you do need to be progressively overloading. You do need to be prioritizing your time there and making sure that you're having very efficient and very effective lifts. But you also need to allow yourself the time to rest from it, to recover from it, and to make sure you're not overdoing it with your training and ending up potentially with being burnt out, exhausted, overly sore, or with a pretty nasty injury. And what you'll probably start to notice if you are someone who has been previously kind of overtraining is when you allow yourself to rest and you do genuinely take that time to recover from your 3 to 5 lifts in the week, you're going to have better energy, you're going to have increased strength, which is then going to translate to better performance in the gym. And honestly, you having 4 or 5 lifts for the week as opposed to 7, those 5 lifts are going to be so much more effective than you going every single day and not having the energy to push through, and the performance just is not there. So if you really struggle with allowing yourself to take a rest day, I would challenge you this week to take an extra one, whether that's you go to the gym 7 days a week, go 6 days this week. If you currently go 6 days a week, try going 5 days a week and just see how your body responds to it. See how you feel after that. And if you are implementing more recovery this week, if you're spending more time stretching, foam rolling, long walks, whatever it is, let me know. Post it on Instagram, add it to your Instagram story, tag me in it, because I always love to kind of follow up with you guys and see what you're doing and how you're showing up for yourselves in the week. But that is all I had for you guys today. I hope this was really helpful, especially for my overachievers out there, because I know there's a lot of you guys listening. I always appreciate you guys listening, and I always appreciate you reaching out as well whenever you do have questions or feedback or comments of any kind. I always, always, always want to hear where your head is at and be able to support you along in your journey as well, because it is always so much better when we have people to lean on in this and when we have a community of people that are like-minded around us. So that's all I had for you guys today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day today. I hope you have a great week and enjoy those rest days.